Okay. Cool. Okay. I think I found another panelist. Oh, hiya. Oh, my powers are glitching. Okay, I'm gonna leave it to the NUS staff um to do the powers of promoting. Also because I shouldn't really, I'm not the admin, but I have been promoting um powerfully. Okay, cool. I think as that is happening, I will just start. I think we should make use of all of our times and really just have the best out of this closing panel. So hi everybody, welcome to the final event of National Conference 2021. I'm Hilary, I'm the current NUS VPHE, and I will be chairing this closing panel. This week has been full of so many amazing discussions, a biscuit debate even, and lots of fun in between with yoga. I think there was a quiz I jumped into that I failed miserably at. And I know that a lot of you have come from the decompression space, if I can say that right, which I've heard such great things about. So lots of exciting stuff has happened, and I'm really sincerely hoping that everyone had a great time at conference. You got to discuss all the amazing motions that you brought up to the table. And I know that from here, we are all leaving conference, but not leaving the movement, and we're prepared to mobilize and organize powerfully. So really exciting stuff. Before I move on to introducing our amazing panelists, I forgot to say my pronouns are she, her, also. And yeah, so we've got an amazing closing panel with some of my favorite people. I think it's all of my favorite people. Going to speak, and this panel is going to be a really, really exciting panel. I'm really thinking about the future and thinking about what happens next after national conference. We've had our discussions, we've put our amendments in, we've done yoga, but there's so much more that happens after conference. That means that everything that we've come together to build over the past few days gets brought to life by the movement, not just the officer team. And I think that's really, really exciting. So this is the next steps for campaigns. And so I'm going to go around and introduce all of our panelists one by one. And then they're going to spend a bit of time telling you what is one thing students should know about campaigning over the next year. So in the order of how they're going to speak, I am going to introduce each panelist one by one, and they're going to give their piece. So first, we've got our amazing NUS Scotland president, Matt Crilly, who before he was in this role, he was Strathclyde Students Association president. And this year he has won so much for Scottish students across the board. And actually his wins has meant that a lot of the wins that you're seeing UK-wide have happened too. So from getting early tenancy releases to putting hundreds of thousands of pounds in the banks of students and student associations, Matt Crilly has been your superstar NUS Scotland president. So Matt, what is one thing students should know about campaigning over the next year? Over to you.
Thanks, Hilary. And I'll be honest, I'm going to totally take that question in a different direction because that's what I do. Because I think the Scottish delegation in particular will probably know that I'm a history wonk. So when I look towards the future, I also look to the past for inspiration. That's what I am. I'm a history student. What can I say? And I want us to really look at our history, because it sometimes feels like things aren't possible as well. And yeah, we get stuck into the kind of current mindset. But I actually want to start off by, I think it's quite appropriate to actually commemorate two anniversaries that we have for this conference right here. So it was at the NUS National Conference in 1971, 50 years ago, that Scotland joined NUS. And I'll admit, I think NUS was pretty rubbish before Scotland joined. It only got good after 1971, when Scottish universities and colleges were admitted in. So that's the kind of first 50th anniversary. But I thought it was also really kind of poignant to actually mark that at that conference too, 50 years ago in 1971, The delegates who were in our seat done something that was pretty historic. The delegates to that conference passed policy backing gay rights, making NUS the first national organisation in the UK to take such a public position that wasn't a dedicated gay rights group. So at that conference 50 years ago, I think the student movement rose up. And 50 years ago too, God, there's some similarities. We faced cuts to student support. We had high rent costs. We had students launching strikes and student occupations. The student movement really was rising up. And 50 years ago as well, we had a Westminster government who at the time decided they were going to come after student unions with Tory reforms, led by an education minister who you might have heard of her, Margaret Thatcher. But the student movement rose up and stood the government down. And what we face today, it isn't easy, but we can rise up. We're about to go into a summer, potentially with next to no student financial support. It's business as usual. Students face the cliff edge if we can't find work. But we can stand down governments who choose to neglect us. We can unify. In 1974, 40,000 students marched through Hyde Park in defence of grants. I'd really love to see us taking that kind of collective action and going into this next year, where hopefully sometime we might be able to actually come together in person. And some of the chats in the last few days have also been interesting from a Scottish perspective. Fees, housing. I don't want to play into the idea of Scottish exceptionalism, because things aren't all rosy in Scotland. But looking to the UGS event a couple of days ago, it finished with a good news kind of segment, and I thought that was quite nice. I wanted to incorporate some of that here as well. We have been successful in some ways in Scotland. So, if you're looking across the UK and you're a student that can't end your tenancy in halls, that isn't an inevitability. That can change. We changed that in Scotland. We got the legal right for students to leave student halls, to leave halls contracts. And of course, there's the assumption that we have free education in Scotland. It isn't particularly true. I sit in front of you today with £30,000 worth of student loan debt. There are so many students in Scotland that pay fees, international students, postgraduates, and so on. But again, it's really interesting for me in the last couple of days, we're talking about the kind of X reduction in fees. I do think there's elements of the Scottish education system that provide some hope that, again, tuition fees are not inevitable. Home undergraduate students at Scottish unis don't pay tuition fees. This wasn't inevitable. This was won through a series of actions. I love a story in 2005, how Scottish students formed a chain of debt around a Scottish Parliament meeting. They held hands and formed a chain of debt round the meeting where politicians were discussing introducing variable fees for Scottish students. And I really just want to say that the things we're facing aren't inevitable. We can overcome them, we can make change if we come together, and we can rise up like students have in the past as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. I think that was an incredible first speech. And I think it's really causing us as a movement to reflect on the fact that, what we have now is not a standard that we have to sort of work ourselves around or even settle with. There is better, and there can be better, and we can get better if we come together as a movement and organize and mobilize and put our power behind getting what we know we deserve as a student body and as a movement. And so thank you so much, Matt. I think it's so important that everyone takes away the fact that the things that you are hoping and dreaming for in education in this system is not inevitable. And so everything that you want is possible. So thank you so much, Matt. And now we've got our next speaker, Steph Lomas. Steph, what can I say about Steph? Steph is an amazing SAB. She is VP Education at UCLan SU. I've known Steph for a while now, actually, and Steph has just done such amazing work this year, from winning her re-election last year because she did such great work in her first term, to doing so much incredible work, not only at UCLan with her virtual study rooms and all of the amazing policies that she's gotten for students across the board. She's also done incredible national work over this year with some amazing colleagues across the movement on tackling essay mills and making sure academic integrity is done right and done in favor of students. As you can see in the chat, she's also our VP self-care. She's my VP self-care, keeps me taking my annual leave, keeps me healthy. And so I'm so proud to introduce my friend and an amazing SAB in the movement, Steph Lomas, to give us our second speech on the one thing students should know about campaigning over the next year. Over to you, Steph.
I mean, how do you move from that? I mean, I know that your hashtag is we move, but I can't move from that. I'm sorry. And Matt, I think me and you really need to talk about history, because I think we will get on like a house on fire, because I'm actually going to talk about a bit of history as well. I want to start off by saying the one thing that I think student activists need to know about campaigning, not just in the next 12 months, but just continually, is when we move, we must move together. That is how we win. Let's look at different things. Being part of the activist movement, we do not simply campaign on things that affect us as human beings. We move on the issues that don't affect us. Let's take a bit of a history lesson. There we go. Let's look at the White Rose resistance that fought back against Nazism. They didn't simply fight against them because it was affecting them. They fought against it because it was simply wrong. Let's look at the civil rights movement, where not only did the Black community fight against civil injustice, but allies fought with them because it was wrong, not because it affected them. And let's look at the Stonewall movement. When they moved continuously, not just when their rights were realised, but when every single member of that community had their rights realised, and they're still moving today because they still face injustice. The reproductive justice movement, apartheid. When we move together. And let's have it right. Students will always be portrayed as snowflakes. Whether we're agreed with or whether we're not agreed with, it doesn't seem to make a difference. We're still snowflakes. I don't mind that. A drop in the water creates a ripple effect of change. And a snowflake together standing with other snowflakes creates a blizzard of change that is transformative, not only to us as a student movement, but to the world as we know it. We are on the right side of history here, people. We should not be afraid to put one foot in front of the other and step up when we are called upon. We are the voices of today, tomorrow, and the future. And for those that say that we should be afraid of those who are in power now, no, make no mistake. It is those who should be afraid of us, because we are coming, and we are coming hard for what we deserve and what this world deserves. So, from me, it's about making sure that you fight not only for yourselves, but for your colleagues, for the people you might know as an acquaintance, and also for the people that you do not know at all, because it is only then that we truly will win. That's all I've got, Hillary. I'm sorry.
No, never be sorry. That was an incredible speech. I was even thinking, like, why was I not thinking this when I was making my election speech? Like, I could have had so much more fire. But I think everything you said was so poignant. The things that really came to mind is, of course, We Move. You know about my We Move loving of that phrase. But actually, we move together. And I think that's something that throughout conference and actually throughout this year as an officer team and as a movement, that is something that we've really done consciously and unconsciously. We've come together when we know that the chips are down against students. Everything was barreling against us in terms of the situation with COVID, in terms of the governments we were fighting against, in terms of all of the injustices students were facing. And we came together as a movement, and time again, we have won for students. And Steph, honestly, the way you've reclaimed us students being called snowflakes, that snowflakes next to one another become a blizzard, I think that is such a powerful analogy of what we are as a movement. We aren't singular people doing things for ourselves, by ourselves, and affecting ourselves. We are a movement of people that care, people that have a vision for the future, people that actually stand in solidarity and allyship with one another, and understand that we're not just doing things because things are the thing to do of the moment, but we're doing things because it's right to do. And so I think that was such a fiery, in the case of talking about snowflakes, that's funny, but a fiery speech that I hope has really roused everybody up for how much power we have as a movement to really, come together and get the justice and the education system and the world and society that we want. So thank you so much, Steph. That was incredible as always. And it's such an honor and a privilege to have you here. Next, everyone here is my favorite person, so I keep feeling like I'm going to say it's my favorite person. But next, we've got our amazing, uncomparable Salsa, our VP FE, VP Further Education. Salsa is one of our colleagues in the NUS exec team and is such a passionate advocate for FE students across the UK. From not only shouting out about the A-level scandal when it was all going on, Salsa has been working tirelessly this year to bring together the FE students in the movement and really mobilize them with the power that they hold in our movement. And I think so often FE students are in the background doing so much work that is enabling our movement to stay fighting and stay fired up. And so I'm so proud and so privileged to be welcoming Salsa onto the floor to tell us all about what is the one thing she feels students need to know about campaigning in the year ahead. Salsa, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I just had some great speeches and I feel like that's a tough act to follow. But I would like to start with shout out to FE family. I think mine is more or less, it's not really a speech, more of an advice to the people who make FE such a beautiful place, such a place where a lot of opportunity is available. My advice to you is keep fighting on. I understand that right now the FE sector is in kind of the shade. So there isn't a lot of limelight towards FE than there is to higher education. So my advice to you is keep fighting on. As the Koreans, I watch a lot of K-dramas, so they keep saying fighting, and I love that. It's so cute. So what's it called? I understand the struggle. So like I said, keep fighting on, and let's get together and start shouting even louder about our ambitions, about our goals, and let's start basically sharing good practice among us. Because like Steph said, we need to move together, and that is something that I feel like we tend to forget. So sorry, I keep saying all the K-pop references is so great. Yeah, so we need to move forward together. There's always strength in unity. And working alongside the higher education sector as well. I think there's always a disconnect between further education and higher education, but actually there's such an opportunity for us to work together to sort out the problems that we both have. So I think working together, shouting out about good practice, and yeah, let's create a movement where both further education and higher education are recognized for all the work that they're doing, for all the support that they've been able to send to students, especially right now within a COVID crisis and a recession. A lot of students have managed to win for the students. So again, let's move together. Sorry, Steph, I'm like stealing your your speech bit, but what's it called? Yeah, let's move together and keep fighting.
Thank you so much, Salsa. And honestly, that phrase "we move" is owned by the movement at this point. Like, from the moment we move into the move, I would love to say I was the first person to say we move, but I was not. It came from many people before me, and that is owned by the movement. Salsa, thank you so much. I think what you were saying actually about the power of FE is so important, and actually working with you, I think about this a lot. How does what happens in FE really influence how we should be looking at the whole education system? And actually, you know, thinking about the fact that FE and HE are linked inherently, that, you know, if you give more attention to one, you ultimately fail everything, because they both have to work hand in hand if we want to see education working in its fullness and in the way that we want to see it happen. And so Salsa, just like, thank you for all of the amazing work that you continue to do, mobilizing students, empowering FE students, ensuring students know that they are not forgotten. It is definitely not unseen and not unheard. And so we are so thankful that we get to have you as our brilliant VP FE. So next up in our closing panel, we have got an amazing person from an organization, a campaign that is very close to my heart, because I think maybe it was even on day one of this job, Not On My Campus reached out to me, really ready to speak about all of the amazing work that they've been doing on campus, and all of the amazing work that they've been doing for years and years, ensuring that sexual violence in education is tackled at its root. And so we've got the amazing Jay here on behalf of Not On My Campus to speak about all of the incredible, to even give the insight from all of the incredible work that you've been doing at Not On My Campus. And I'm just so excited to hear everything that you have to say for the student movement. I know I can already feel the inspiring vibes coming through. So Jay, please take the floor.
Honestly, thank you so much for inviting me. And having these spaces is so uplifting, especially just hearing these incredible speeches that have been made, because everyone's been saying, you know, the power of that movement can really help to reshape an entire sort of like sector around how we want education to be. And I think for Not On My Campus, the work really it shows that power of coming together, sharing best practice, but also for students as well, ensuring that you aren't alone in terms of tackling this, that together we can really help to reshape as to what institutions should be doing rather than what they think they should. And I mean, over the last year, we've seen such, I think, an incredible sort of momentum around really addressing and recognizing that sexual violence isn't just, you know, one of the things that occurs a moment at an institution. It actually is a crisis. And if we aren't addressing and recognizing as a crisis that is impacting both students now and has impacted students who have been in education and will impact, unfortunately, those who are coming into education, we will never be able to effectively tackle this. And having that honest conversation with institutions that we don't, you know, obviously, when it comes to our approach when working with student groups is that, you know, we want to help build those robust relationships with institutions, that, you know, we want to be involved in those discussions as how we can help reshape and address, you know, we're not there just to simply say that the institution, you know, you're doing a terrible job. You know, literally, it's more that, you know, we want to work with you, but we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to pretend that everything's wonderful when realistically it isn't. And the only way we can actually do that is having an honest conversation. One of the things I think definitely for student activists coming in is the power of mobilizing in solidarity within institutions and bringing together student groups. And really helping to sort of build those coalitions, because it's a lot harder, I would say, for institutions to unpick, especially when you have multiple different student groups working together. But it also helps to bring everyone into those conversations to ensure that when we're talking about sort of reforming reporting systems, or even about consent training, that it has that strong intersectional focus, that everyone feels that they're being recognized, and also it comes to support as well. Because when it comes to sort of sexual violence, there is just huge issues, you know, both between the undergraduate and postgraduate as an example, but also for international students as well, and for students of other different minority and marginalized communities who basically feel these systems are totally inaccessible and do not in any way sort of provide them opportunities to feed in more so. And I think for institutions as well, their approach is becoming incredibly problematic as to the culture, as to what they assume their role is, and the fact is that their responsibilities and how they engage students. Because realistically, not my campus, we are one organization. There are fantastic, more and more student organizations being set up, obviously Glass Taboo, Reclaim the Campus, Open Your Eyes, and it's incredible seeing students really, focusing on starting organizations within their own institutions to help reform, and then wanting connecting out to support other students within other institutions, and it shows the practice that institutions have practically, in a lot of respects, have not properly addressed this, because realistically these organizations aren't going away, more and more being set because students are that frustrated and are mobilizing, obviously working through NUS and together, and it really shows the benefits of that. What I would say, especially for mobilizing solidarity, is obviously the power of building networks to help share best practice, and obviously recognizing that this isn't a moment, this is a movement, and that really the benefits of it is that it shows that it's being led from the grassroots level as to what we as students feel needs to be done, rather than it being sort of filtered down to us in a sense, as to what institutions may think or what other organizations. It's important having that sort of having that student link. And so I would definitely say, for students, if you're interested in mobilizing, the fantastic things as well, obviously intersectionality is key, but also planning short-term, mid-term and long-term aims. Short-term aims as to what you feel the institution can do right now, what you'd like to see your institution achieving by the end of the year, and long-term aims. Because obviously at the end of the day, I think when we talk about tackling sexual violence, literally it's like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Because there's just so many things, and it can become so overwhelming, and it can also be quite, I think, emotionally draining. So obviously, I think definitely self-care is key as well. Being kind to yourself, taking time for yourself, but resting and recharging is so powerful, because it means you can come back fighting, especially when you do get a lot of red tape being thrown at you by the institution. And there's one, so we care about sexual violence. It's part of our action plan for 2022 or 2023. It's like, well, that's brilliant. But what about survivors now? There's a bit of a gap there as to these action plans, and so it's so powerful. Having that self-care, also planning out those terms, because handover, I can never stress, handover is so important. Making sure that regardless of if you're in a committee role, non-exec role, like a liberation officer role, a SAB role, handing over and helping to really for your incoming successor as to the work that's being done, because just so that who the potential contacts and allies are within the institution, what that work has been done. Because for institutions, there is that cycle, unfortunately, of where an incident occurs. Naturally, they will send out a response saying that we condemn sexual violence, we're doing X, Y, and Z, which is, which is great that they're doing things. How much of that has an impact on survivors now is obviously questionable. They expect students will naturally be outraged, will organize, will create petitions. And so literally for them, all they could do is they will organize a meeting to discuss, what students want. And it is more of an attrition game, because all they have to do is wait a couple of months, and eventually, that obviously because of exams and everything that happens, it impacts the momentum of that sort of movement. And it basically means that by potentially the end of summer, if there has been a handover, that means that literally that universities can move at their own speed, because they know that eventually there will be a point where there's a bit of burnout just because of term time. And even better for them is that on average our term, we study 3 years on average, and so literally means that once we go, all that experience goes with us, and so it just shows how important handover is, because that means that students know what institutions are doing, what they are completely, sorry for swearing, fucking up, and what that the work that is being done, and how they can really help progress that as well. Because I think with this, there is so much. This is the point to do it now, because students have waited long enough for institutions to do this, and I think there are institutions that are doing incredible work, and they're incredible, so academics that are really working with students to do this. But there is a systemic crisis, and this needs to be addressed. I think through, everyone's been stressing the power of that movement in helping to support each other and sharing best practice, and working both within our institutions, lobbying, obviously working collaboratively within each nation, and also nationally as well, with national bodies. We're trying to ensure that they are, engaging, and that we're helping to try and ensure that everything is transparent, and it gives students who may not be in an officer role, may not be in a society, that feeling that they can actually have access to for justice, but also access to a system that makes sure that they know the process as to what will happen when they report. They know the support that's available to them, and they know that sort of time scale as to what will happen at each stage as well. So honestly, thank you so much again for inviting me, and it's incredibly, it was such a wonderful panel. Sorry, if it's okay, one of the things that we are doing on the 28th for Denim Day is a national UK call to action conference. And that is open to all students, basically talking about how we can build that cross-collaborative movement together and really helping to sort of like moving on to pushing and addressing these issues. And so sorry if I went on a bit long there, a bit anxious.
No, never say sorry for going on. Honestly, I am the queen of talking and having to get kicked out of meetings because I don't know how to leave a meeting and I have nothing to say. You had everything to say and everything you said was so fruitful. And you could even see from the chat, people were so inspired by what you said. And there were a few things that really, really stuck with me listening to you. First of all, what stuck with me is, and I don't know if this stuck with me also because it reminded me of a song as well that really empowers me as well. But when you said this is not a moment, it's a movement. And I feel like that's also from Hamilton, which if you watch Hamilton as well, I love you as well. That's just like peak, like how to become Hillary's favorite person in a second. But no, genuinely, you saying that it's not a moment, it's a movement is actually a massive testimony to the fact that the work that we do in this movement, the work that is done at every stage and every issue that we consistently fight on is historically built on the backs of so many activists, so many organizers, so many mobilizers even that have stood in the gap for so many students when these issues were not even widely spoken about. I know sexual violence, lots of people are speaking about it today, but there was a time where it used to literally be a niche of people that would stand up and step up and talk about sexual violence and confront our institutions. And I think that's so powerful. I think what's also powerful is the fact that you said that the approach that Not on My Campus takes is intersectional. And I think over the past year or so, I think it's been so apparent how important intersectionality is in this movement. But actually, we've seen it over years and years and years that when we approach issues without an awareness of the fact that issues don't happen in isolation. Sexual violence doesn't happen in isolation. Neither does racism, neither does homophobia, neither does transphobia. All of these social injustices and actually these global injustices even happen in ways that are interconnected. And as interconnected as people are, so are these issues. And so really making sure that we are intersectional with our approach, make sure that every single student, every single person, every single group continues to be a part of every single thing that we do. And I think that is such an important point to take. And then the final thing that really spoke to me from what you said, Jay, was the fact that we cannot sleep on the fact that we need to continuously put pressure on our institutions. I think everybody here that's either an officer, a representative, even a delegate here knows what it's like to fear handing over, not knowing whether or not the issues that you've been fighting so ardently for, and that you've been standing on the shoulders of so many people that came before you. There's always that fear that it's never going to get picked up, and actually that the hard work that has been done could get lost in an institution, in history, in a handover even. But what's incredible, and actually what I think is incredible about Not on My Campus specifically, is that it's the network building, it's the mobilizing, it's the fact that in being connected as a movement, in not relying on only having to sit within traditional power structures, have we found our power as a movement, right? That whether we are in office, whether we are just a regular student with a passion, whether we are just somebody that is just incredibly active and part of, the student body in ways that you just never knew that you could be, everybody has power in this. And so it's so important that we never stop putting the pressure on our institutions, on our government, on the sector to really step up and stand out in the things that students have been fighting for ages and ages for them to do. And I think that is so important. So thank you so much, Jay. I think you are a testament to the brilliance of Not on My Campus. And it's so exciting that we get to see the work that you do, and we are working with you on so many great things. Which reminds me, I've got emails to send off the conference, very exciting emails. And so, yes, thank you so much, Jay. You are an incredible person, and I'm so excited to continue to hear all of the great stuff Not on My Campus are doing. That leads me to our final speaker before we go into the Q&A part of this closing panel, what can I even say about Becky? How do I even start to talk about our fabulous NUS Wales president? I've known Becky for a while now, and the one thing that I will always say about Becky is that Becky never stands down. She doesn't care if she pisses off a few ministers. She doesn't care if it means that people are going to be getting emails at times when they were not expecting that email to drop in their inbox. But what I know about Becky is that she is unrelentless in making sure that she wins for students in Wales. And actually, she's been unrelentless in doing so much hard work that us in the other nations and in other parts of the UK have really stood on her shoulders in the incredible work that she has set and the standard she has set for the movement in fighting for students. And I know there's lots of things I can say about Becky, saying that she won 40 million for students in Wales. I can say that she managed to persuade the Welsh government to get a proper Erasmus placement in. But what I will say about Becky is that the speech you're about to hear from Becky is surely going to inspire, fire you up, and get you ready for what is coming next. So Becky, over to you. One thing, or many things even, that you would say to students about campaigns in the future.
Hilary, I'm blushing, my goodness. I think the first thing I actually wanted to do was just kind of share my appreciation for everybody that is here today, every student activist, every campaigner, everybody that's just starting to dip their toes in the water of activism through NUS for the very first time. You know, I've not had the chance to just show my appreciation for the amount of time and effort that people put into exactly what they do for the justice that they know that students deserve. You know, doing this work in any year is tiring, it's relentless, but in a year like the one we've just experienced, it's on a whole other level. And yet, you know, you as students have stepped up to the plate, you've taken the fight head on, you've taken it to your vice chancellors, you've taken it to your politicians, you've taken it to the streets where you can. And in all four nations, I think we've seen new waves of grassroots activism led by you as students, something that, you know, is not often seen or heard, particularly in places like Wales. And I'm just in absolute awe of the U-turn that we've seen coming from students in the last year. You know, initially it was quite hard for me to pin down one thing to kind of answer this question, because I think there's so much that is on the horizon for us. But I wanted to take a bit more of kind of a cautious approach to this. And just quite simply, I think we've kind of got to keep in mind that, you know, despite everything, next academic year is not going to be back to normal. It's not going to be back to what we're used to. It's not going to be back to what we know, not in any nation, no matter the differences between our borders. You know, universities and colleges might want to treat it as such, will likely market it as such to incoming students, will market it as such in their risk assessments and say everything's going to be fine. But students are still going to be struggling. Academically, financially, mentally, socially, the list goes on. And make no mistake, there will be those across the board that try to mislead us as students, pull the wool over our eyes and tell us that we've learnt our lessons from last academic year. But sadly, once again, it's probably going to be down to us as students and activists to hold those institutions to account when we know it won't be just like that. We've seen that institutions and governments are fine with exploiting and scapegoating students when it suits them, but they don't like it when students fight back. The fights that you've been heading this year on rent, on mental health, international student solidarity, decolonisation, educational justice, have been seen in Wales, in some places for the very first time, which for me is just incredible. So a huge shout out to my Wales team. But they've been going on for so long elsewhere, and we know COVID has done nothing but exacerbate the issues that we all knew were there, but have been privy to being swept under the carpet by those that can make those changes but choose not to. But the narrative of that is definitely changing. We all have unique journeys that have got us to where we are today, but all our fights remain the same: for a free, liberated, accessible education system that cares and works for its students from cradle to grave. This is what education should be, what NUS as nations stand for, and what students deserve. And in fighting for this, we want you to know that we as NUS are behind you every single step of the way. Between COVID recovery, elections across the nations, and an ever-changing education system, a lot will alter once again in a short space of time. But one thing is for certain, the student movement are ready to take it head on. This pandemic has not only exposed systemic injustices to those within our institutions that were previously voluntarily blind to this, but it's given institutions no place to look except inwards at what exactly it is they're doing, or rather not doing, for students when they need their support more than ever. Student organisers have a fire in their bellies that hasn't been seen like this in years. And I know that because I've seen it and I felt it just in the last 3 days in this space. The grassroots organising, the swift connections through social media and Discord that I've seen are just the start of a student-led revolution against an education system that has persecuted, crushed and systemically exempted those from disadvantaged backgrounds for far too long. But the wins that we have secured this year for students on rent, on mental health, on academic mitigations, they don't just materialise out of thin air, they don't just happen. The win secured by NUS and by students' unions up and down the country starts with you on this Zoom today. And we couldn't do what we do without your support, without your enthusiasm, without your drive, without your passion for justice. And all I can say is the fire that you have and the fire that you've shown in the last few days, hold on to that, because next year we're still gonna need it. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you so much, Becky. I always love that Becky, in a lot of the times I see her at work, she always manages to get a Welsh phrase or a Welsh word in there somewhere. And so I always appreciate the Four Nations approach that really comes into our meetings. We hear a bit of Welsh. Do you know what, actually, I think maybe that needs to be the standard of NUS. In every space we're in, we need to make sure that Four Nations are represented in their most authentic self. So if you are from one of the Four Nations and you want to really represent yourself in the comments, please do. But Becky, your speech was so inspiring. And I think you really brought it back to the core of what we are doing. I think sometimes it's so easy to think that our power is only in the fire, but actually what we do day on day, week by week, month by month, year by year, I think we're nearly at our 100 years, centenary by centenary or century by century, is a real testament to the fact that our ongoing commitment to fighting for students, winning for students, and actually making that change that we all want to see happen, is a real testament to how strong this movement are when we decide that we are not going to back down and we are actually going to, fight for the best and win the best. So Becky, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of those words. And I think everybody in the comments we can see are really, really excited about everything that you had to say. So with this, I'm actually going to introduce, I don't know if she's around, she might be, but I know that Larissa is also here. She's going to give a closing speech in a bit, but as we are going to Q&A, I think it would be nice to have everyone here. Yeah, let's do a Q&A. So if you have any questions, there is a Q&A function.
Sorry, I'm coming.
No, that's fine, Larissa. I literally put you on the spot. So whenever you're ready, we are ready to be graced with our NUS president. It's always a very rumbling moment when we know Larissa's coming, because she's always got the words, she's always got the fire to bring. So I'm excited for your closing speech. But right now we're on to questions. So if you have any questions for our lovely panelists here, all about like the campaigns for the future, how we're going to mobilize, hi Larissa, and how we are going to, go forward, please do put it in the Q&A function. And I will start reading it. I'll start reading it out and let you all sort of hear some of the great insight deeper into what our panelists have said. So whilst you're doing that, I know that I've got a big question for each of our panelists. So I will let you go around. And Salsa, if you're still around, please do jump in. I really want to know, obviously, like I'll be here next year with the rest of the team. So I know that for at least half of the people here, I'm actually going to be doing this work with you. So that's exciting. But if there is one thing that you are excited for coming up in the future, whether it's post-conference, whether it's in a year, for the student movement, what would it be? So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start with Becky, and then we'll go to Jay, Salsa, Steph, and then Matt, and then Larissa. So Becky.
I'm going to be that person. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I realized that like when I'm excited, like my words are just not like, they do not connect. Like it becomes a jigsaw puzzle, but none of the pieces fit together. Massive apologies. If there's one you're excited to look forward to for the student movement, what would it be? This is a very on the spot question. It's a very big existential question too, isn't it?
And I think again, like the minute you said that, there's definitely a few things going through my brain. I think one of the things I'm really excited for on a Welsh level is we have our Welsh Senedd, so our Welsh Parliament elections happening next month, and that is the first time in Wales that we have 16 and 17-year-olds, so our FE and our apprentice students, being able to finally have the vote. So I'm really excited to see, you know, the amount of young people that have been consistently kind of closed down, shut off, you know, not having their voice heard in the same way that you know, other members of our society have been able to, and you know, finally seeing them be able to bring their voice to the ballot box and make that change, you know, at the highest level within Wales. I'm genuinely so excited, and you know, there's a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes around making sure that our students register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, then please do. It takes 5 minutes. And yeah, I think I'm so thrilled to kind of see our young people finally have their voices heard in the way that they deserve, in the way that they do by us, you know, being heard in the same way by their politicians. So I think from a Wales perspective, that's what I'm really excited for. And I think on a national level, I think that, you know, within probably the last 12 months, I think we've seen a genuine shift in kind of the Four Nations way of working. Like, I think there's certainly a lot of newfound kind of consideration for kind of the Four Nations as equals, you know, the way that we work together in terms of when there's a win in Scotland, Wales will kind of find out how that happens. If there's a win in Northern Ireland, then England will find out how that happens. And there's a lot of working going on between kind of us as the 7 FTOs in terms of how do we, the wins that we've got in other places, how do we replicate that to make sure that, you know, students in other nations benefit from that as well. I know in some areas it's a bit more of a struggle because, you know, we have different governments, and but you know, I think that's something that I've genuinely kind of really appreciated as an FTO, and actually I think going into next year, and it's only going to make it easier. I think that we've kind of ironed it out a lot this year in terms of how we want to work as a team, and I think that going into next year, you know, it's that classic kind of working together. I know Steph made a really good snowflake example, and actually, you know, the FTOs could be seen as 7 snowflakes working together as a tiny blizzard. But yeah, I'm genuinely just really excited to know that there's a kind of a drive to work as a Four Nations and work as a full NUS UK. It's just, yeah, it's been really great this year.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Becky. I'm now going to throw it over to you, Jay. Do you have any insight for what you're excited for over the next year for the student movement? It could even be something that my campus is about to do. Yeah, what's your thoughts? I might ask you to unmute because I know it's a bit fiddly, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, I'm horrific with technology. I would definitely, I mean, honestly, I think it's always one of the things that when you see so many different challenges, it can, again, feel very overwhelmed and deflated, but I think there's always such incredible energy and just passion from student activists. Like literally, I always think one thing with definitely student activists is just how incredible and creative and imaginative students are. Literally, there are no bounds. So you start, if you want to set the campaign at your own campus and then take it on to become a national network or campaign or international, there is no sort of limitations, which is always quite incredible. Like you said, literally, you don't have to necessarily be an officer, or it could be any student who's really if you have a burning issue. One of the things we're doing a few things, but I think some of the things that is really exciting is we're running our 2nd online convention later this year, and it really aims to provide an opportunity for incoming student leaders to build connections with organisations, and providing an additional layer of support and guidance in how to support survivors from marginalised and minority communities, and also really helping to raise the awareness of the incredible work that what these organisations are doing. What we've, I think, found in the previous years, and I know this is so my experience, is that when it comes to training on these issues, unfortunately, it is quite limited as to who and this training is accessible to. And normally for students, especially those who are in a volunteer role, might be part of the fence or other societies, might usually are the first point of contact if a survivor wishes to disclose. And if they haven't had that training or guidance, then it becomes very difficult as to how to set those barriers as to looking after your own well-being, not burning yourself out. And we found as well that when students are really keen to want to focus on sort of supporting LGBT+ survivors, we would always say, have you spoken to Gallup? And I think, again, we were really keen to try and ensure that students coming into the roles would have the opportunity to sort of build those network links with these organisations. So if they are interested in doing any campaigns or projects, that they have access and have those network links where they can actually work with these organisations to help structure the research that they're interested in doing. Because I think sometimes with institutions, they can always sometimes turn around and say, well, how did you word these questions? What was the focus? And if you say, well, actually, we worked with these organisations who helped shape that structure, it becomes a lot harder for the university to try and push it to one side. So the online convention is something that we're really proud of, because we're looking at this year trying to do like activism and solidarity, advocacy and solidarity days, really trying to help raise the visibility of sort of organisations, suppose students, sex workers, disabled students, Black students, students of colour survivors, and also really ensuring that international students are part of that conversation as well, and postgraduates, just as when it comes to tackling sexual violence or any form of abuse, the only way we can effectively do this is if we understand the different barriers that students face. And since that, obviously, whilst we should always work towards large issues like criminalising sexual violence, if we aren't working to address the issues within the criminal justice system, we aren't addressing the inequalities, and also the factors that, for students who are sex workers, there are potential risks if your university has a morality clause or something that potentially penalises them if they only disclose that they are a sex worker, then it becomes very ineffective. And so the online convention is really to help sort of address that and really provide opportunities to sort of for students to have that extra support and guidance, but also to build links with organisations and to give the organisations an opportunity to introduce themselves as well and sort of the work that they're doing. Another thing we're really excited, I think we're looking at, is that we're discussing the idea of a global consent week, and that really helping to sort of raise the discussions about consent and really trying to address the taboo. I think the work I remember when I was in my first year undergraduate, literally the discussions, there was a huge pushback, even the idea of having compulsory consent workshops, with the responses people get, how dare you, and you assume that I need to go to a compulsory consent workshop, what are you trying to imply? And now it's amazing that more and more institutions are doing the compulsory consent workshops and modules, but the problem is that in itself is great to get to that point, but that's not the end point. As to how we can effectively address these issues. That is a good point to be at, but obviously we need to look at how we what is the content, what is the focus of that? Is it really engaging students with these discussions, and how are we carrying on discussions about trying to build a culture of consent within our institutions beyond sort of welcome weeks? Because if we're relying simply on just that module and that workshop, I think obviously we're on a bit of trouble, because these issues do, and it's so important, I think, in looking how we can phrase it and how we can obviously promote sex positivity, but also looking at really addressing those issues around how consent is portrayed and how it's seen, and really having a wide discussion. And this is something that we're doing in collaboration with, that we're speaking to the Global Students Forum and looking at, because one of the interesting things that we've had with conversations with students and organisations in other countries is the same recurring issues are happening again and again and again, including about sort of the consent in being literally focused within welcome weeks, but then nothing really following on after that as well. And so obviously both of these, we're really keen to get as many students involved. For the online convention, last year it was free, and we're really keen to try, especially for student volunteers. You don't have to be part of a liberation society. If you're part of any group, or if you're an activist, it's open to you as well. Just as we understand that, we want to ensure that as many student volunteers are getting access to even this additional layer of support to help support you in your role this year.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. That's incredible. And as I was saying before, like, there's an emoji that I use a lot, is the shaking hands emoji, like, not on my campus in intersectionality. Like, that's how I feel. And I think the things that you were saying, especially about like connecting to groups that are organizing, I know that the whole of the NUS team would feel this, but like, that's been such a big priority to us. And so it's such a it's so validating, but also such a timely reminder that, when we as officers, as delegates, as people in positions where we are really inspiring and leading change, connect with groups on the ground, we can make real change. And so I'm so excited for your day of action, but also for all of the events that are coming up with Not on My Campus. And I know in the chat people are asking for links to more political education and links to all the stuff that you're doing at Not on My Campus. So if you get a chance, pop it down there. But if not, you can literally Google Not on My Campus. They are everywhere and doing incredible work. So thank you so much, Jay. I know South is having some connection issues, so I'm going to move to Steph, I believe. And then we'll go to Matt, then Larissa, and then lots of people are sending in Q&A questions. So we'll move on to the Q&A from there. So
Thanks, Hilary. Yeah, I think as VP Education and from the heat that I'm getting on Twitter, if I do not mention academic misconduct, I think I might get a vote of no confidence. And with a couple of months to go, don't really want that at this moment in time. I'm really looking forward to actually the realisation of SA Mill legislation, but not only that, because that is literally the tip of the iceberg, even though it feels like that's exactly the full iceberg that we're asking for, considering how difficult it is being at sometimes. But it's about the educational systems fixing the underlying causes that force students and back students into these corners where they have no alternative but to use these systems. It's about making sure that assessments, if we have to have them, make sure they're accessible, make sure they're not overzealous, make sure that we're not assessing a student time and time again when they've already told you that they know the stuff that they're actually learning. It's about making sure that our education systems are actually representative. No one is going to thrive. They're simply going to barely survive in an education system that was built hundreds of years ago and does not actually look or believe in the values of students and society nowadays. As I often say to my students, we need to take that cookie cutter approach to who our students are and what our society is and throw it in the bin. Instead of the education system making students fit into that cookie cutter, education systems should be fitting around those students. By doing that, we make sure that students are no longer vulnerable to these predatory systems that capitalize on student concerns. So in short, because I'm trying to keep it short, I'm looking forward to that, making sure that students are educated with the information they need to make the choices to succeed in life, and making sure that education is shaped in a way that can transform lives rather than disempower them. That's what I'm looking forward to.
No, thank you so much, Steph. And I'm looking forward to the SA Mill work too, because we're working together. So it's going to be good. Also, I think a launch is coming up, which is really exciting for that. So when all of that comes up, yes, it will be so, so good. So keep an eye. I don't know if you want to shout that out really quickly.
Yeah. So sure. First of all, shout out to the Academic Integrity Collective, you bunch of nerds. And on April 19th, we will be launching the hashtag Better By You campaign, really empowering our students that your student voice is the only student voice we want to hear. We don't want to hear from people that haven't been in the rooms where you have. Your voice is amazing, regardless of where you have come from and what your background is. We want to hear from you. So we're going to be educating you, and we're going to be educating educational providers and quality providers on what they should be doing to support you as students. So keep in touch.
I am so, so excited. I always love a launch, but this one is even juicier because I've been seeing the seeds being planted, and now we're going to get to see it all grow and bloom. So Matt, what is one thing you're so excited for the next year? I always feel like Matt has the exciting stuff because everything that happens in Scotland, Larissa was saying yesterday, eventually happens everywhere else. So like whatever Matt is telling you is like a preview to what we should all be expecting. So be ready. This is going to be very exciting.
Currently pissing with rain in Scotland, so expect some rain in the rest of the UK. I'm kidding. So I am pretty excited about next year. We speak about a marketized education system. You go, if you meet a kind of random student, probably didn't know what a marketized education system meant. Like, what does that mean? And we speak about, the way in which it feels like our institutions value money more than they value us. They've been starved of public funding. But it's been quite difficult sometimes to actually communicate that marketized system to students. I don't think we have to worry about the communicating of that flawed system and what we're against and what we're for and what we want to see. I think the experiences that students have had this year has been so bad, but so illuminating on the structural flaws within our education system. And I'm really excited because I hope that, and I actually take Becky's I think quite probably appropriate note of caution about what we're to expect next year. Like, we're probably not going back to normal, but I have to grasp some form of hope that we can take students from TikTok to Trafalgar Square. This year we've seen hundreds of thousands of views and likes on students on TikTok, but I'm so worried right now that we're not right in front of the faces of the people in power. It's one thing for us to sign a petition. It's another thing for students to lock hands together round the politicians and say, we're not letting you introduce variable tuition fees. That's another thing. So I don't know if we'll be there next year. I don't know if we'll be allowed the mass gatherings, but the social connectiveness that comes from a campus experience, whether you're at college or uni, meeting your friends in coffee shops and meeting people, and I hope that we take forward some of the online tools that we've developed this year as well to make our organising quicker and more accessible so that everyone can access it. But it's kind of welded in with the in-person interconnectedness that we've known in the past as well. So yeah, that's my exciting hope, is that we go from TikTok to the Trafalgar Square.
Yeah, and I saw Larissa dancing when you mentioned TikTok, because Larissa has single-handedly infiltrated TikTok's like rise to power within the student movement. So I can see that she's even doing her dancing. I can't. No, but I think what you said actually, Matt, is so poignant. I think what has been difficult in the past is that sometimes it has felt that people have been on different pages because the political education has been like in pockets and in bits. And so where we would have easily mobilized and organized together, it was difficult because people weren't on the same page. But I think a real testament to the hard work that the movement have been doing, but actually just the reality students have had to face over these past, I'm going to say 2 years, because we're not yet at the end of it all, has just been such an opportunity for people to become aware and alive of the fact that, what they're experiencing now is not a new thing. And actually with that political education, they're understanding that, there's so much more to dig into. And I can't believe we haven't said this yet, but like, when we first came into office, the one thing that we were saying day in, day out is that we want to get people grasping at the roots. So now I can like tick that off on my list of things that we should never forget to say. And actually what has happened this year and over the past few years is that really what the movement have been doing and what students have been doing have been digging deeper and finding the roots and grabbing the roots and starting to pull them up. And I think it's so important that over the next year we don't let up on that. Still, rip out the roots of the system and let's actually build a system that is worth the students, the amazing students and activists and grassroots organizers that have been fighting for it for years and decades and nearly 100 years, 99 years this year. And so last but not least, before we jump into all the questions, Larissa, what is the one thing that you're excited for in the next year for the student movement? Everyone hold on to your chairs. You're going to feel an earthquake. This is going to be strong.
Now. No, this is a setup, because how am I supposed to go after from TikTok to Trafalgar Square? How am I supposed to follow that? That's rude. You should have just skipped me and gone to Q&A. No, but honestly, very much the same energy as what Matt was saying, because there is so much energy here. Like, I think I've seen it this week. You lots have been on fire, all the contributions, all the workshops, all of it, like you lots have been on fire. I've seen it over the past 9 months since we started in this role. Week 6 was the A-levels fiasco. We were out on the streets. We saw students, the FE family coming out in full force. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have seen the energy. And what I'm excited about now is how we harness that energy, how we turn the anger into action, how we make sure that there are sustainable routes for organizing, how we make sure that every single person who feels infuriated, who feels like they faced injustice, who feels like, why am I experiencing this, has somewhere to direct that. Because I think the most dangerous thing when you're feeling injustice, when you're feeling like you're being downtrodden by a system that wasn't built for you, is then feeling helpless on top of it. And so how can we make sure that we don't have to be helpless, that students don't have to be helpless, because they know that they can turn that anger into action, that they can go from TikTok to Trafalgar Square. Go on, Matt, with a nice slogan there. You're gonna see that coming out you're gonna see that coming out over the next year. I'm not gonna let it go. And just make sure that people know that there is a vehicle for them to really take this to the next level, not just now and not just getting justice now, but really, as Hilary was just saying, looking at grasping at the roots of an education system that is rotting at its core and has been for 2 decades of a failed project of marketization. And finding the language, finding the tools, finding the mechanisms that resonate with different groups of folks as well in order to get them there. So I'm very excited for the kind of promise of political education in the year ahead of us and mobilizing in the year ahead of us. But I'm going to end it there because I know we've got loads of questions. And folks want to chat about.
Yeah, and honestly, like there was a point when you were speaking, I grabbed onto my chair because I felt the earthquake. I'm not gonna lie, that closing speech, like guys, honestly, like secure your tables, like secure your doors because you're gonna feel it. Honestly. And I'm looking at the questions, and these questions are juicy. This movement never fails with the juicy questions. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna try and see if I can like strategically pick out people that I might think might be able to answer these questions best. But of course, if a question really perks you up, and panelists, just jump in. You know me, I'm a servant of the people, just get involved. So the first question I'm seeing here is, how do we break down the imposter syndrome around getting involved in national student activism? This is a real question. Whoa, this is a real question. Do you know who I might go to first for this? I'm going to go to you, Larissa. And I say this because I think of all the people I've seen have to step into these roles, I think like the baptism of fire that we've had as a team, like having you at the head of our team has been a massive testament to the fact that coming into such a big role and being able to step into it with confidence, even when things are just like day by day, you don't know what's happening, is possible. And like the fact that you were on Newsnight, how it wasn't even 6 months into the role, and Newsnight were calling up your phone, like, is an actual testament to how confidently and boldly you stepped into the role. So do you want to take this one? How do you break down the imposter syndrome around getting involved in national student activism?
Wow, that is a big question. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you refer to me as confident because folks will know, you know, I have my doubts and my, you know, feeling imposter syndrome myself. And I guess some of the things that I come back to is that your lived experience is justification enough for you being in that space, right? Like, who is going to lead? Who is going to lead if not you? Because you are the person that has lived through being a student, but also navigating the world and the context that we're in, knowing what all of those barriers are, knowing what all of those systemic issues are. And so there's nothing else that you need to justify you taking up that space, taking ownership, than that experience. And I think there's so often, particularly, you know, we're moving into a new era of NUS here, but in the past, so much of it was, and the routes to getting involved were only around elections, and that made it quite difficult for lots of folks who don't see themselves as people who run for elections. To be honest, I say this and people laugh at me now because I run for so many, but I don't see myself as someone who runs in elections, and so that it was always very difficult for me. And I had to, you know, have people calling me up, blinging up my line, telling me, no, you've got to run, you've got to run, you've got to run. And so I think also finding routes that work for you, that match the thing that you're angry about, but also the way that you want to get involved. And yeah, I think sometimes it's not by force to do things in a way that the system necessarily constructs. For me, my background is in organizing, and that's the way that I came up, is just building solidarity with folks who are experiencing the same thing, getting other people in a room, having like just reading together, chatting together, sharing experiences together, and seeing that as reason enough to take action. So yeah, that's, for me, don't see anything as a blockage to you getting involved in national campaigning. We're ready for you. We're ready for you. Come, let's chat. Because there's nothing that should stop you or get in your way of being part of this movement, because it belongs to you.
Yeah, honestly, you know when Larissa says come and chat, she's being serious. Honestly, she's being very, very serious. So don't take that lightly. Like, we are ready to hear from you all. So the next question that I'm seeing here is, how do you keep motivated when the powers that be keep trying to knock you down? I'm actually going to go to Steph for this. I'm going to go to Steph for this because I know there's lots of interesting stuff that happens at UCLan, and you have been really, really relentless in fighting for students through it. So it'll be really interesting to see what you have to say for how to keep motivated, just like when it feels like setbacks after setbacks are happening. So jump in.
Thanks. Okay, so one thing I do when I'm going into a meeting, and it's kind of like really self-centered, I put my big hoops in, because I go in, I mean business. The hoops are in, you know I'm coming for you. I think my Vice Chancellor's group worry when these bad boys come out. But I think the thing to keep reminding yourself is why you're going in those rooms. And at the end of the day, blizzards don't just happen for like a short period of time. They keep coming. Well, they do in Lancashire. But they keep coming and they keep coming. They're relentless. They take room to breathe, to reflect, and they go to another place, but then they come back, and they come back bigger, and they keep building and building until there is nothing, no room for them to go no. They have to say yes. One of the things that I always teach in my Activism 101 sessions is know the arguments against you before you even know the arguments in your favour. Because if you know those arguments better than the people that actually believe them, they're going to be shook, like absolutely shook. They're going to be like, this person did not come to play. They're here and they mean business. And feed in from other people around you. I would not have been able to survive these past 2 years without the amazing FTOs at NUS, the amazing full-time officers within my own institution, and the amazing students and other sabbatical officers at other institutions. We build each other up. That's what we mean when we're a movement. We're not just a movement arguing and fighting for things. We're a movement when we care for each other and practice self-care, obviously. Because self-care is an act of political warfare. Like, if you're not looking after yourself and you're burning yourself out, that is exactly what they're after. So you've got to look after yourself so you can look after everybody else. That's all from me, my pitch of knowledge.
No, and honestly, I know what you're saying is coming from the heart, because literally I get messages when people can tell that I'm tired from Steph being like, when was the last time you took annual leave? No, have you rest? Are you taking care of yourself? So I know you're literally speaking so authentically, and it's so important that in this space we really, really just take heed of the fact that in everything that we do, we just need to be so mindful of the fact that, like, it is hard work that we are doing. We are standing on the front lines, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you're doing it alone. And so really reaching out to the support systems, and even the fact that like never forget, and I think sometimes we need to say this to ourselves as individuals, like, never forget you are part of a movement. Like, never forget the fact that, like, you can drop somebody a Facebook message and they'll know instantly, like, what is going on. Like, never take that for granted, because I think that is so important. There's a question for Becky here, actually. Becky, I'm going to come to you next. The question says, what are your views on Welsh students and BTECs, especially with exams and the lack of communication with students? So yeah, Becky, what's your thoughts around that?
This is a very good question, and a very topical question. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful because we're in the pre-election period in Wales. We've got to be careful of Purda. But obviously, so the BTEC situation in Wales is primarily kind of aided, but kind of held by England. So the BTECs that students do in Wales are run from England. So the real difficulty that we've had in Wales, and maybe other nations as well, is because education in Wales is devolved, so we get to make our own kind of laws and our own regulations as Welsh government for education in Wales. BTECs don't necessarily come under that because they are run from England. So the difficulty with this is the Welsh government were able to make their own decisions on what happens with GCSE and A-levels over the summer, but BTECs were relying on England making those decisions. So, Henry, I can see your face. So, obviously the difficulty is with that is we are not necessarily in control of making decisions around BTECs. Ellie, your question on why BTECs is run only from England, is a very good question, and one that I know the previous education minister, they're stepping down, but one the education minister in Wales has questions time and again. It's not one that we have an answer to yet. Obviously, with the election coming up next month, we will be electing a new education minister. We don't know obviously who that is, what party that's going to be or anything yet. But this is very much a question that myself as NUS Wales president will be asking, in terms of if education is devolved, why is there an exemption? I don't know the reason for that as yet. There isn't really an answer that has come to my mind, or one that we've been given. But obviously this is the difficulty. So we talk about devolution, but nations don't have full devolution. So not everything is devolved to their own individual governments. Some things are, so some things we have full control over, and other things we are still under the powers of Westminster. Hence why there's been a bit of a rise in the indie movements, as we've seen in other nations, Wales included in that. So it's a very good question, and honestly I wish I had the answer, because obviously this discrepancy has meant that so many BTEC students in Wales have had to wait so much longer than their A-level and GCSE counterparts to find out what's happening with their exams, to know if they have to go into college, all of these questions. And it's so frustrating to know that there's nothing, that our hands are tied at the moment, and it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. And my empathy goes to Ellie. If you were at the rally yesterday, Ellie spoke so passionately about the difficulties that she's faced as a BTEC student. And Ellie is just one of tens of thousands of students across Wales that are in the exact same position, having that autonomy being taken away from them because their exam system is under a different nation and a different government entirely. I'm sorry that was not really an answer, but it's, yeah.
No, but I think that was really, really important, because you broached on actually some really important things that, first of all, highlight the importance of the fact that the devolution issue, especially, actually, and the importance of the fact that, like, as a team, us working together ensures that where things might not be necessarily easy to do in a nation-specific place, we can continue to do it on a national level. And so it's really important that in recognizing these issues, we also continue to understand that, like, they are not isolated to places. And so we must remember to mobilize that when we are seeing our fellow like students in the movement and activists in the movement fighting for things in nations, it's things that we should be fighting for respectively where we are based. And so I think that's really, really important. So there's still lots and lots of questions. I've been looking through and just trying to find questions that are answerable for each of our panelists. Next, sorry, and then there was one other thing that I was going to say. I think I can say this, but NUS Wales has an Education for a Fairer Society. Is that the name of your manifesto?
Education for Fairer Wales. Yeah.
For a Fairer Wales, yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is definitely worth looking at, especially during this election period, to just sort of really think about the current issues that NUS Wales have come together with all of their member unions to really bring together. So an incredible document to read. I really enjoyed reading it, as I did Scotland's one too. So yes. So Jay, I'm going to come to you next. There was a really interesting question in the box, and I think you can really speak to this, because I know that Not on My Campus started off as a local campus campaign, and then it's just like become so big, which is incredible. And so somebody in the Q&A asked, how do we start our own campaign? And I think you'd be great to answer that question. So do go ahead. Oh, give me a second. I think you're still muted. Hold on. I think I might have the power to unmute you. No, I don't.
Sorry. The question is just obviously I know over time. It was were they interested in how to start their own campaign or starting a campaign within a certain area?
It said, how do you start your own campaign? But I know obviously you've been working a lot in sexual violence, so you can 100% speak from that perspective, and I'm sure we can find so many bits in between that would really speak to other campaigns too. So however you feel comfortable, feel free.
Awesome. So I mean, honestly, with Not My Campus, I think it originally did start off just as a network. It was really just a project where we had collaborated with other students at different institutions, and it was really trying to sort of do like a solidarity project for It's Not Okay Week. And I think after that, we were really keen to try and sort of solidify more in sharing best practice. And I think, I mean, having a network or a campaign it can be so powerful, because I remember when we were trying to lobby our institution for a survivor support group, and literally the conversations was just like, no, you can't do this. It's, your society is not foreseeable. And it's happened here. Newcastle had set theirs up, and so we would say, well, if Newcastle can set theirs up, and this is how they've done it, why can't we? And it was amazing how the conversations then changed from no, you can't do, yes, you can, with appropriate safeguards. And it just shows that power of that solidarity in rebuilding those network links. So I would say for anti-sexual violence group, if you're interested in sort of a campaign in that aspect, one of the things that was quite beneficial is as to what do you feel are the primary aims as to, both those that you want to focus on this year, but also those moving forward as well, because realistically, I mean, sometimes for institutions, the speed they move at, as best as we, the well-wishes that we want to tackle it in 1 year, it will take time, but you can make that significant progress. And so if you want to set like a survivor support group, there are obviously please get in contact if that's one aspect of that. But I think one of the things for the campaign is trying to find a name that best reflects what students identify with. So when we've had students who approach us saying, which is in doing like a campaign on our campus, what we say, you don't necessarily have to call it on the campus. You can call it, what you feel students will identify with, because that's the most important thing, is that they know exactly what that group is doing. I would say for like, if you're interested in building like a wider campaign on specific issues, I think definitely connecting, where possible with students within each institution and discussing as to what's happening on the ground, helping to share that best practice, and really discussing as to what you're interested in doing together. Because even just having that network of both supporting the work and sharing resources is so powerful. Again, when we were trying to lobby for free accessible menstrual care products, it was so helpful actually having the work that Newcastle had done in really showing institutions that actually there isn't really much of an excuse as to it can't be done, because it's being done in other institutions. But also it has an opportunity to sort of lobby more widely as to like change that you feel should be done at the national government, and really providing that platform really to sort of come together and really have that louder voice. But also as a community as well, one of the things I find so wonderful about having a network like that is that you come together with students who have equally had horrific barriers and frustrations, and really helping just to sort of like support each other. Because I mean, the work that we do can be so isolating and so emotionally draining. Just having a space like that is incredible. And yeah, sorry,
No.
obviously if there's any interest on doing this, please let us know, because what we're really keen to do is support the work that you're interested in doing, helping to amplify, uplift, and providing a platform to connect, and really just working together. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is the impact as to what we want to achieve. In really, both in tackling sexual violence, domestic abuse, but also really in creating a truly accessible and inclusive education system that really leaves students feeling really empowered and feeling that they were as moving on to the next step, rather than unfortunately sometimes coming out feeling quite deflated and also sometimes quite abandoned by the institutions and how they see students. And it is so. I think with campaigns, I mean, with this, there is so much potential to really make it bigger and growing it at your own speed, and also really providing that chance for you to be as ambitious and creative as you can. Because again, as well, a lot of us are volunteers, and having a network like that where we can really help share and support each other really helps, because it means that you have that network where people who you're connected with will understand those barriers you're going through, and obviously helping to support as to how we can overcome and address those as quickly as possible. So sorry, Elizabeth.
Yeah. No. I think you answered that excellently, and actually, I think there's so much power when when you actually and this is really a testament to everything that's been said already. But like being able to link up the issues that we know are going on in so many places and come together and like I can't stop talking about it because it's true. It's the power of collective action, isn't it? Is when you're able to come together, build networks, empower and amplify one another. That's when we see real impactful success in the work that we do. So thank you so much for that, Jay. I think it was really, really important that for anybody that's wanting to start a campaign, there are probably already people wanting to do that too, and all you need to do is be able to connect with those people and build build a strong and powerful campaign. So thank you so much. So Matt, I'm going to come to you now. I think you're the only person I haven't come to, and I saw two really juicy questions that I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to try and do it in a very succinct way. So please do bear with me. So firstly, there's a question that talks about NUS's four-nation approach and how we've been building and working on making sure that that's more unified and strong in its essence. And so this first part of the question asks, how can we ensure a more unified and joined up approach between all the nations of NUS UK? And that's really all about how we can work together to succeed like we did in the A-levels fiasco. And I think this really links well with the second question here that I think would pair well, because I also know that you're really good in speaking on this. Do you think it's truly possible to change our institutions' approach when they operate in a colonial and neoliberal context? And do you think we should focus on changing our system instead? And so I think what I'm trying to ask you is, how do we get educational justice for all students at the root, but do that in a four-nation way? How do we do that in a unified and joined up way? Does that make sense? It's a very big question.
I mean, it's a pretty big question. On the four-nation stuff, yeah, it's obviously. I think we have done pretty well this year on the kind of the sharing of information and stuff like that. And I think, I think there's things that we could do better at NUS. To some extent, NUS replicates the structures of Westminster, whereby we have a UK Parliament and then NUS UK, and then we've got the devolved governments with the devolved NUS NUS Scotland, Wales, USI, NUS USI. And I think there's probably more we could do in terms of like, a kind of federation type model, or I'm not sure, but it is difficult. But I think kind of fundamentally right now is we all have a collective target. Sounds too strong a word. We have a Mordor. There's a Mordor, and that's Westminster. That's sucking the life out of all of us across the UK, and it impacts all of us. Whether devolved governments can do certain things. It's all reliant on the funding that comes from our Mordor, which is Westminster. So I think one of the kind of really crucial things is that to work together four nations. I think the key central thing there is that we have that collective kind of opponent or person or institution to go to, which we need to value students and to support students. And I don't think we've quite seen that yet. And it's a real challenge, I think, to do that. But I think that's where we can unite in a four nations basis. Like, one of my earliest memories in the student movement was getting on a wee bus at like, I don't even know what time it was, like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, to get on a bus to London to join you folks for the kind of free education demo in London. And I think it's really important that we do that on a four nations basis. And I oppose the marketisation of education on a four nations basis, because we do have collective struggle. And on the kind of question, can we reform our institutions? I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. One time I was complaining so much about my university, and one of the student union staff members said to me, "Matt, why don't you go away and create your own university?" And my response to that was like, I just don't know how that's going to happen. So I think at this stage, I think I don't know if we have much of a choice apart from to try and really grasp at the roots of these things and uphold these institutions, and probably do it on a dual strategy. I think the lobbying work that we do, that student unions do, I think goes so far. I actually do think we need to go more radical, grassroots based as well, to really get at the fundamental roots of marketisation, colonialism, that really shape our institutions. But I actually don't know if I have a formed strategy on this.
Yeah, I did ask you a really big question, big two questions put together, but I think those were really excellent answers and actually quite honest answers about the fact that, like, I think in all of this it's been a journey, and so we just consistently move as a movement year by year, like term by term, and just do what we can to continue to move towards our collective vision. So thank you so much, Matt. I know there's a few other questions in the chat that we won't be able to get around to, but there are a few that I have seen about being able to participate in NUS. And before I move on to some great solidarity statements, before we go on to Larissa's closing speech, I hope you've all secured all your tables, chairs, and doors. I really want to say that for anybody that has been really inspired, and I hope you've all been inspired, but really inspired by everything you've heard today, there are rather so many ways to get involved, especially through NUS, but also through your local SUs, associations, and colleges and unions. And so if you are a student of any identity and with any background, there's spaces at NUS for you to get involved, and there's spaces across the movement for you to get involved. So I've seen I've seen questions about students with learning disabilities, students from international backgrounds, students from all types of identities wanting to get involved, and there are so many ways, and you've experienced some of that through our conferences over this season. So we had Liberation Conference just last week, and we had our Nations conferences before that, and I think we've only got Northern Ireland beforehand, and we are constantly working on ways to make sure that we are making all of our roles and involving yourself in NUS and throughout the student movement more accessible, but we always welcome feedback. So thank you so much for answering our questions, panelists, and thank you so much to everybody for asking your questions and participating in this Q&A. And so with that, I'm going to move us on to two brilliant speakers that are going to give us 1 minute, and I'm going to have to be tight on time, but 1 minute each. They are going to give us a solidarity statement. So I'm going to welcome, and I don't know if you've been promoted yet. I need to find the power again. But I believe we've got Ruth Day and Connor Moylett, I think, coming to give us 1 minute solidarity statements each. So Ruth, Connor, you are welcome. I don't know who's going first. It might be a battle of whoever gets here first. Connor, you have one. Please do give us your solidarity statement.
Thanks so much. I've got like 2 minutes and a half, so I'm going to try and rattle through it really quickly. But yeah, I'm Connor. I'm the education officer at Sussex SU. I'm also on the coordinating group for the Rent to Strike Network. And yeah, some of you will be already sick of me for like sharing this constantly throughout the week, but I'm just asking you for your solidarity with the students who are being evicted at Queen Mary's at the moment. Yeah, so yeah, we've had some really important conversations about cost of living, student housing, how we're all being screwed over by the marketized system. And I think these conversations are really important, they're really good, but we also need to unite. And when students are at the rough and violent edge of that system, we need to stand with them. And that's what's going on for these students at Queen Mary's right now. So you heard from Sim yesterday at the rally, if you were there, and she's a 19-year-old. She just moved into student halls at Queen Mary's, first time leaving home, like many of the students we represent. She was lied to about a university more focused on marketing than welfare. Turned up at university to be locked in a shitty rat-infested hall and charged mad rent for studying online. But rather than moan about that, they took action collectively. They built a group around them, they built a rent strike campaign, they got people in, and they were making the reasonable case that students shouldn't be paying full rent for a year where everything else has changed. And they won massively. They got 30% off for all students. Against the weight of students refusing to back down, the uni had no chance, and they forced the uni leadership to act in the interest of students. And perhaps more importantly, they showed students, their like peers and like flatmates and that lying down and being shit on by the university wasn't the only option. Instead, like, yeah, going to the OIA isn't our only option, but that collective action works. And they showed Queen Mary's that too, which gets on to the thing that's happening now, because Queen Mary's obviously didn't like being shown that. It won't surprise you that they since then have been cracking down on rent striking students, evicting them in the middle of a pandemic. Some of the students who led the rent strike are being evicted for covering their fire alarm with a sock once. That's what's happening to Sim, who was there yesterday. So no warning, no fine, just a 15-minute meeting and then made homeless by the university. So if I could see you all, I'd ask for a show of hands, but I reckon some of you have probably had a ciggy out your window in first year in halls with a sock on the fire alarm at some point. At least I did. But yeah, but we know it's not because of that they're being evicted. They're being evicted because they have massive rent strike banners in their windows and have been seen to be organising. So yeah, we talked about unity and collectivism a lot this week, and it's really important that we do have those conversations, but it's important that we take action as well. So we can stop this guy, Colin Bailey, who's the principal of Queen Mary's. We can stop their team of bullies. We've done it before when they tried to not pay furlough to any of the SU staff, but we need to take action. So I'm going to share lots of things in the chat. One of them is I really want you to just send a letter to Colin Bailey. 100 people have already done it yesterday from the conference. Please do send a letter. We've got a thing, you just fill in a form and then it goes straight out. And then also just tweet on the hashtag no more evictions Queen Mary's and stand with students, because that's what we're about at NUS. Thanks. Sorry that was so much longer than.
No, it's fine. And I remember we heard from what do you call it, the rent strike Queen Mary U. I think that's the app that I remember. And there's so much solidarity that we need to be showing with the students there. So please make signs. I need to still post my sign. Make signs, show solidarity and raise awareness. Ruth, over to you.
Yeah, I timed my thing and it's supposed to be 58 seconds, so get ready. But yeah, hey everyone, I'm Ruth and I'm Student Living Officer at Bristol SU. So as I'm sure everyone has seen, the police and crime bill has come to the forefront of our minds and has caused a widespread massive protests across the UK. But it's also highlighted once again the violence police show towards people every day, especially those from marginalised communities and communities of colour, and the way the media hold police lives higher than the lives of everyone else. Bristol, where I'm based, has been a bit of a hotspot for these protests. So we have seen indiscriminate police violence, dogs set on people, people sitting on the ground charged and attacked by horses, and the mainstream narrative remains solely as protesters violently attack the police. So I really want to take this opportunity to send full conference solidarity to everyone who is opposing this bill, everyone who is standing up for our rights to protest and standing in solidarity with GRT communities who are fighting for their right to exist. I want to send full solidarity to everyone who has faced or witnessed police violence which mainstream voices have tried to justify, and to everyone struggling with the trauma of this. And if you're able, please do all you can to oppose the bill. Find out where your local protests are, get in contact with MPs, and get involved in grassroots organising against the bill. So solidarity to everyone fighting this, and let's come together to kill the bill.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was incredible. That was a good, succinct, way of wrapping up all of the amazing work that you and other activists and protesters have been doing in Bristol fighting against this bill, and we've been seeing it nationally. So thank you so much for that solidarity statement. And everybody, please do show solidarity, share on social media, do what you can to oppose this bill. And without further ado, this gives me, I'm putting my hands on my head because I'm stabling myself. I can't wait. It's time for our very own, our groundbreaking, earthquaking, show-stopping NUS President Larissa Kennedy to give her closing remarks. So everybody, I told you, lock down your chairs. This is going to be good. So Larissa, over to you.
Thank you so much to our VP Auntie. I know we're on high energy right now. We've had our panel of amazing speakers and our Q&A. We've just had some solidarity statements, and those kind of statements have always been foundational to our conferences at NUS. I've put in my hoops to get ready because Steph told me to get ready, and everyone in the chat was saying that they use their lipstick, their lip gloss to get ready too. So I thought, let me just quickly turn off my camera and just prepare myself for you folks. I know, as I said, I know we're on high energy, but for a moment, I just do want to hit pause, because conference, before I begin my closing speech, I would like to hold a minute's silence for the loss of 19-year-old student Richard Okorigeye. Richard, his family and his loved ones were failed by institutional racism, not only inherent to the Met Police, but to policing itself. And may Richard rest in perfect peace and continue to fight for safety, justice, and liberation as we go on to fight for safety, justice, and liberation for Black folks in his memory. We will not forget him, nor this injustice. So a minute's silence in Richard's honour, if we can. Thank you for observing that with me, conference. In so many ways, we are organising in a dark and difficult time, amid a time where so many of us have experienced loss and hardship during the pandemic, among the backdrop of an incredibly bleak political landscape with a UK government that has scapegoated students, taken a eugenicist approach to this pandemic with no care for the disproportionate impact on disabled folks, on Black and brown folks, on working class folks. A government that is peddling the erosion of our rights to campaign and to fight back. A difficult time, to say the least. But I want to thank you, conference, because despite the exhaustion that you must all be feeling in what has been a year like no other, and such a hard time to be an officer, to be an organizer, to be a student, you've still energized me. Your words have poured into me, into one another, and we've reminded ourselves of our why. Why we fight so hard, why we campaign, why we lobby, why we organize, why we keep the vision of a free, liberated, accessible, decolonial education system alive. Within and beyond virtual conference floor, you've shared with me and with one another your experiences as international students, as students of faith, as mature students, as survivors, as asylum seekers, as students from liberation communities. And you too have shared and poured into one another's visions for the education system, for the world, and for how we organize to get there. And with the end of this conference, we see the beginning of a new wave of energy for the student movement, because these 3 days have just been one stepping stone in your time in the movement. For the first time delegates, let us know in the chat if you're a first time delegate, give yourself a shout out. This is the beginning of your journey with the NUS family, and there is so much more action to come. And for those who've been in this space before, please let us know if you're a second time, third time. Someone yesterday said fifth time, and I was screaming. But please let us know if you've been in this space before. And I feel it, and I'm sure that you feel it too. This is a new era for NUS, an era where we focus on what unites us, not what divides us, where we know that we need grassroots student organizers and student officers coming together to resist an education system that was built on neoliberal colonial promises and is rotting at its core. And as an abolitionist myself, I'm all the way here for it when it comes to tearing down and building anew, but the building is not easy and it doesn't happen overnight. People remember the protests and the rallies, the fun and the sexy parts of our mobilizing, but they don't always remember the WhatsApp groups, the Zoom meetings, and all the things that happen behind the scenes to get us there. And that's why I'm incredibly excited that based on some vital conversations on the Discord, at 5 p.m. on Zoom, we're holding space for delegates to lead a session around how we build power at the grassroots, where we go from here. On Tuesday, I said that unity starts with you. Cheesy, I know, but by extension, NUS belongs to you. And as officers, we want to support you in building the organizing communities that work for you, that support the ways that you want to be involved, locally, regionally, and nationally, and that bring us together in our resistance. I also spoke about both our collective power and our voting power, but I know that there are still some of you who haven't registered to vote out there. So this is your second reminder to register right now. We are 4 weeks away from polling day today, 4 weeks. And as we fight for the commitments to the demands in NUS Scotland and NUS Wales respective manifestos ahead of the Senedd and Holyrood elections, and as we fight for the Metro Mayor candidates to make commitments to replicate what we've done with the London Plan, we need your voting power. So if you haven't registered to vote yet, get on it right now. And if you have registered already, I want you to message a friend, or even better, a group chat of friends to tell them to register too. So let me know you're on it in the chat. And now, so much has been said, so much has been shared this week. And before I come to a close, I have to do a few thank yous. First off, to my officer team. To Nations Presidents Matt, Becky, and Ellen, who's with us in spirit, but currently at USI Congress. The work you've done and continue to do is so inspiring to me. Your wins from your governments have pushed us to do more, to demand more, and I am so genuinely grateful for the three of you and the way that you inspire me. And to our UK VPs, Salsa, Hilary and Sarah, who's also with us in spirit right now, to serve alongside you as NUS's first UK exec completely made up of women and femmes of colour is a true joy. And I really can't imagine navigating these roles in such a difficult time without you. As officers, we've heard firsthand a lot of your positive reflections and feedback about the workshops and the sessions, but this conference, these 3 days have absolutely been built collectively across NUS staff and officers. So this is the shout out to all the wonderful staff members across the NUS family and those who've joined us in facilitating, supporting and delivering this week, who have poured masses of time, energy and intentionality into building accessible spaces that bring out the best of our movement with inspiring and empowering content within those spaces. And the final thank you is to you, conference, every single delegate. Whilst I was a student organiser long before, this is my 3rd national conference. My first, I was a first-year SAB, and in many ways I was overwhelmed by the vastness of our collectivism and how to find my own way to take up the mantle within this incredible movement. At my 2nd conference, I was a placement student and an election candidate. And now I have the joy and privilege of speaking to you as national president. This is an honour that I do not take lightly for a single second. The opportunity to have learned from the student movement over the past few years and to continue to learn from the movement every single day. From first-year undergrads to PhD students, folks for whom this is their first engagement with NUS to seasoned organisers, students and SABs alike, we have all had a voice in this space and shaped not only this conference, but this movement. And there are so many moments from the past 3 days that I'm going to take away and hold in my heart, but I'm just going to share 3 that I'd like to reflect on with you. On Tuesday in the opening, Shantae and Suhaima reminded us of our power and the responsibility we have to be vocal and unapologetic in seeking justice and liberation however we can. Last night at the rally, Grian, president of Queen's University Belfast SU, reminded us of the importance of being radical and being rooted. And yesterday afternoon, Exeter PhD student and member of Decolonial Dialogues, Riyad Gamour, reminded us that decolonization is rooted in the knowledge that I am because we are. And that last one for me, that one hit differently, because it's at the crux of all of our organizing, solidarity and collectivism. Each of us is here, each of us is doing transformative work on our campuses in our respective spaces because we are seeking better for one another. Because despite the individualist, isolating rhetoric that this government wants us to buy into, we know that our lives are intertwined with one another, our existence is intertwined with one another. So I encourage you to take these moments that have stood out to each of you, reflect on them, and hold them dear. Because when our institutions and the world are trying to limit what we believe is possible, we can call on one another's words to renew and re-energize us in the year ahead. So as we approach our centenary, the big 100, it's up to all of us to do what students always do and have always done. Be bold, be brave, and fight for justice and liberation, not just for students, but for the world beyond too. And we will win. And in the spirit of the knowledge that I am because we are, all that leaves me to do is to invite the rest of my team to come off mute so that we can officially bring the conference session to a close. So team, you with me?
I think the rest of the team might have been demoted.
You know what, Zoom. Hilary, it's me and you. Let's do it.
Bye, conference. Thank you so much.
Conference is closed.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh, this is so exciting. Bye, everyone. Oh, this is so great. Yes, please rest. Everyone that needs to sleep. Eat, sleep.
Yeah, all of that, all of that, all of that, all of that.
And we go again on Monday. We go again.
Don't remind me. go again at 5 o'clock.
Oh my gosh, we do.
We really do.
We move has the phrase
much
"we move" has swallowed this movement, but we keep moving because we keep winning for students. Oh, bye everyone. Everyone knows me that I can never leave a call first, so I'm gonna have to get kicked out. That's me from now.
Oh,
Everyone.
see you at 5. I don't know why I'm shouting as if someone's walking away. You know, the end of the conference when people would be going out the door, I'm really like, see you. Bye.
Oh, bye. Oh, next year physical conference has to happen. Can't wait to see all your wonderful faces.
Honestly.
Oh, bye everyone.
Bye.
I can't believe next year will be our last conference. It will just be us crying, saying bye, like shouting about like.
I'm still going to be a student after that, so we'll see.
You'll be back for your 6th conference the next
my
year.
degree, please. Oh my gosh.
Oh, we are literally fighting for your educational future because you're going back.
Can we win free education so I don't have to pay for the last 2 years? Can we do that ASAP?
That can be our fuel from now until forever. Bye everyone.
See you.
We're just watching this number go down now, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm actually watching the number as well.
Bye everyone. I think there's a few, you know when you leave like an event late and there's a few people at the end and that's sort of like the juiciest bit. I feel like, or even this is a better analogy, at the end of a movie when the credits has a secret scene, that's what I feel this is like.
So we're
The
about to do
secret
like
scene
an
of the
interpretive
movie.
dance or something, like you missed it if you left. Sorry to everyone who cut, but
I might start a Twitter thread to be like, power to everyone that stayed to see the sneak peek of NUS 2021-2022.
oh my goodness, I actually forgot this is being streamed to YouTube.
Oh my gosh.
So sorry to whoever's watching this.
Subscribe, sign our petitions, link in bio.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I'm exhausted.
to be in like,